What if the very things that make you feel different, the overthinking, the restlessness, the sense that you never quite fit in, were actually signs of something remarkable happening inside your mind? Most people assume high intelligence looks a certain way. They picture someone calm, quick with answers, always the smartest voice in the room. But the science tells a very different story. Stay with me. IQ is just one measure of intelligence, and a limited one at that. What neuroscientists and psychologists have discovered over the past few decades is that truly exceptional minds don't just think faster. They process the world differently, experience it more intensely, and carry a set of quiet psychological patterns that most people never recognize as signs of intelligence at all. Here are 7 of them. Sign 1. You feel everything more intensely than those around you. Not just emotions, but sounds, textures, ideas, and the moods of others. You've probably been told you're too sensitive, too intense, or that you need to calm down. But Polish psychiatrist Kazimierz Dabrowski called this overexcitability, and he spent his career documenting why it appears consistently in gifted and highly intelligent individuals. Dabrowski identified 5 forms of overexcitability: psychomotor, intellectual, imaginational, sensual, and emotional. High IQ individuals tend to show multiple forms simultaneously. Their nervous systems are literally more reactive, picking up signals others don't register. This isn't emotional immaturity. It's a more finely tuned instrument. The cost is that the world can feel overwhelming. The gift is that nothing escapes your notice. Sign 2. You're acutely aware of how much you don't know. While others speak with confidence, you hesitate because you can see the complexity others are missing. This isn't self-doubt, it's intellectual honesty, and it directly contradicts what most people assume intelligence looks like. True intelligence doesn't feel like certainty. It feels like an ever-expanding awareness of uncertainty. This is the inverse of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Those with limited knowledge often overestimate their competence, while those with genuine expertise become increasingly aware of what they still don't understand. The smarter you are, the more precisely you can map the boundaries of your own ignorance. Research from Cornell University confirms that metacognitive accuracy, knowing what you don't know, is a hallmark of high cognitive ability. Sign 3. Your mind won't stop. You run mental simulations for conversations that haven't happened, problems that don't yet exist, and scenarios most people would never consider. You've probably been told you overthink, and you probably do. But here's what the science says: that relentless internal processing isn't a flaw. It's your default mode network operating at an unusually high level. The default mode network is the brain system active when you're not focused on external tasks, when you're daydreaming, reflecting, or imagining. Studies published in Neuropsychologia found that higher IQ is associated with stronger and more integrated default mode network activity. In other words, that background hum of thoughts you can't turn off isn't anxiety. It's your brain doing its most sophisticated work. Sign 4. You find small talk exhausting. Not because you're antisocial, but because your brain craves stimulation at a level most conversations don't reach. When someone talks about the weather for the 5th time, you feel a kind of mental friction, a gear-grinding sensation when your cognitive resources are engaged far below their capacity. This is not arrogance, it's a mismatch. Research on cognitive engagement suggests that high IQ individuals have a higher threshold for what registers as intellectually rewarding. Shallow conversations don't activate enough of the neural architecture to feel satisfying. This is why many gifted people develop a reputation for being quiet in groups but transformatively engaged in one-on-one conversations about things that actually matter. They're not being difficult. They're waiting for the conversation to begin. Sign 5. You watch before you act. While others rush in, you observe. You gather information, read the dynamics, and hold your response until you understand the situation more completely. In a world that rewards speed, this pattern gets misread as hesitation or passivity, but it's neither. It's what psychologists call inhibitory control, the ability to resist the first impulse in favor of a better response. Studies on executive function consistently show that higher cognitive ability is associated with stronger inhibitory control. The brain of a high IQ individual doesn't just process information faster, it also has a more sophisticated braking system, one that holds back premature conclusions while more data is gathered. The pause before you speak isn't uncertainty, it's deliberate processing, and it almost always produces a better outcome. Sign 6. You question things others simply accept, not to be contrarian, but because your mind automatically searches for the mechanisms behind every claim. Why does this work? Who decided this was true? What happens if the assumption is wrong? These questions arise unbidden. They always have, and they've probably gotten you into trouble with authority figures who prefer compliance over inquiry. This is metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. It's one of the most reliable cognitive markers researchers have identified. A study in the journal Intelligence found that metacognitive skill, separate from raw IQ, predicted academic and real-world performance better than many standard measures. Your tendency to examine your own reasoning processes isn't navel-gazing. It's one of the most powerful cognitive tools a human can possess. Sign 7. You pursue things for the sheer need to understand them, not for grades, not for money, not for approval. When something catches your curiosity, you follow it obsessively, sometimes into the early hours of the morning, sometimes for years. This intrinsic motivation, the drive to learn and explore independent of external reward, is a consistent psychological signature of high cognitive ability. Neurologically, high IQ individuals show stronger activation in dopamine pathways associated with curiosity and novelty, rather than the reward circuits tied to social approval. Their brains are literally rewarded by understanding itself. This is why many gifted people struggle in conventional environments that offer external incentives but provide little intellectual autonomy. They're not unmotivated, they're differently motivated, fueled by something most reward systems never bother to offer. Look at all 7 signs together. Intense sensitivity, awareness of your own ignorance, relentless mental activity, aversion to shallow interaction, deliberate observation, persistent questioning, and intrinsic curiosity. What do they share? They all point to a mind that is fundamentally more engaged with reality than the average, a mind that cannot turn itself off because the world never stops being interesting enough to ignore. Here's what this is not: being the fastest to answer in class, having the highest grades, or impressing people in conversation. Many high IQ individuals were told they were underachievers, described as distracted, labeled as too much or not enough. Intelligence isn't always legible, and the traits that look like problems in one environment are the same traits that produce breakthrough thinking in another. Context is everything. If these signs resonate, the most useful thing you can do is stop trying to suppress them. Stop apologizing for the intensity, the questioning, the overthinking. Start building environments that reward depth over speed, understanding over compliance. Your cognitive signature isn't something to manage, it's something to align your life around. The people who do that, who build toward their natural architecture, tend to produce work that changes things. If this video gave you something real to think about, subscribe to Mind Decoded. Every week, we break down the psychology of the mind most people never take time to understand. The workings of consciousness, behavior, and the hidden architecture of human intelligence. This is a place for people who can't stop asking why. We'll see you in the next one.